Hi everyone, today we're going to have a look at equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions are fractions that name the same amount. Equivalent means the same. So here I have a model for you. We have a circle that has been divided into two equal parts. One of those parts is shaded, so this fraction represented here is 1/2. Over here we have the same circle, but this one has been divided into 4 equal parts. 2 of those parts have been shaded, so this fraction is 2/4. If you look closely, you can see that half of each circle has been shaded. It's the same amount, so we can say that 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4. Equivalent fractions are formed by multiplying or dividing both the numerator and denominator by the same number. It's important to remember when forming equivalent fractions that you need to do the same to the numerator as you do to the denominator and vice versa. So here's an example using the fractions that we have modeled up here. Here we have 1/2. The numerator is 1, the denominator is 2. We've multiplied the numerator by 2 to get a numerator of 2. We've multiplied the denominator by 2 to get a new denominator of 4. So 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4 because I've done the same to the numerator as I have to the denominator. We can do that in reverse as well using division. So if we start with 2/4 and divide our numerator by 2, we would have a new numerator of 1. Our denominator of 4, when divided by 2, would give us a new denominator of 2. So 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. Some more equivalent fractions can be seen using this model. Here you can see that 1/2 is the same as 2/4, which is the same or equivalent to 3/6, which is equivalent to 4/8, which is also equivalent to 5/10, and that is also equivalent to 6/12. All of these fractions here are equivalent to each other. Equivalent fractions are really useful to us. We can use them to help us simplify. A fraction in its simplest form is a fraction where the only common factor of the numerator and denominator is 1. For example, 2/3 is in its simplest form because the only common factor of 2 and 3 is 1. We can use these equivalent fractions to simplify a fraction with 3 different methods. We can list the factors, which I've shown here. We can use division ladders, and we can use factor trees. Firstly, let's use listing the factors. If we start out with a fraction of 20/28, or 20/28, and we have been asked to simplify it, we could simply list the factors of our numerator and denominator. We would divide the numerator and denominator by the greatest common factor. And so to find the greatest common factor, I've listed them here. The factors of 20 are 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20. The factors of our denominator, 28, are 1, 2, 4, 7, 14, and 28. In order to identify the greatest common factor, I look at my list of factors and I find which one is in both sets and has the greatest value. So here it's clearly 4. So I then come over to my fraction that I started with, 20/28, and I divide both the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor, which is 4. So 20 divided by 4 is 5, and 28 divided by 4 is 7. So 20 over 28, or 20/28, in its simplest form is 5/7. So as I mentioned, you can also use a number of other ways to find the greatest common factor of two numbers. We've just seen how to use listing the factors, and here I'm going to demonstrate how to use a division ladder to find the greatest common factor of two numbers, which will help us simplify a fraction. So if we started out with a fraction of 42/56, we could use a division ladder to find the greatest common factor of our numerator and denominator. So over here, I've begun a division ladder. I'm looking to find the greatest common factor of 42 and 56. Now, automatically I look at these two numbers, and because I know my facts, I recognize that they are both multiples of 7. So 7 must be a common factor. So I list 7 out the side, and then I divide 42 and 56 by 7. 42 divided by 7 is 6. 56 divided by 7 is 8. I now have two new numbers to look at, and I recognize that because they're both even, they must be divisible by 2. So I list my factor here, 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now, I look at 3 and 4 and see if I can go any further. I can't with 3 and 4 because the only common factor they have is 1. There are no other common factors. So this is where I stop. The next step is for me to multiply the common factors that I've listed here to find my greatest common factor. So if I multiply 7 and 2, I find that the greatest common factor of 42 and 56 is 14. My next step is to divide the numerator and denominator by the greatest common factor, which is 14. So here I have my original fraction, 42 over 56. If I divide each, the numerator and the denominator, by my greatest common factor, which is 14, I end up with the equivalent simplified fraction of 3/4. And you'll notice in my division ladder, I had those numbers listed already. It's a big clue. Another way to simplify a fraction and find the greatest common factor is to use factor trees. So if I start with a fraction of 27 over 36, I can list the factor tree for each of the numerator and the denominator to find the greatest common factor. Here's how I do it. To start with, let's start with our numerator of 27. I look for the lowest prime number, lowest prime factor that goes into 27. So 3 times 9 is 27. Now I recognize that 9 is a composite number, so I need to break that down even further until I get to the prime factors. 9 is 3 multiplied by 3. So now I'm completely down to my prime factors. Let's move on to 36, our denominator. 36 can be described as 2 multiplied by 18. 2 is a prime number, so I've circled it. 18 is a composite number, so I need to break it down even further. 18 is 2 by 9. 2 is a prime, so I've circled it. 9 is a composite. I need to break that down even further. 9 is 3 multiplied by 3, both prime factors. So now I've done the factor trees of 27 and 36, my numerator and denominator. Let's list the prime factorization for each number. The prime factorization for 27 is 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3. The prime factorization of 36 is 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3. So I've listed the prime factorization for my numerator and denominator. The next step for me is to identify the common factors. And both 27 and 36 have 2 3's in their prime factorization. So I use those numbers and I multiply to find the greatest common factor. 3 multiplied by 3 equals 9. So the greatest common factor of 27 and 36 is 9. I then go back to my original formula and I need to divide the numerator and the denominator by my greatest common factor in order to put it in its simplest form. So 27 and 36 are both going to be divided by the greatest common factor of 9. 27 divided by 9 is 3. 36 divided by 9 is 4. And that's how to simplify a fraction.